Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast, a podcast carefully designed to introduce a wide range of very talented and highly skilled professionals ready to share their knowledge and advice with you. Please welcome the host of I Got a Guy podcast, Michael Drelichars. Welcome again to I Got a Guy podcast. I'm your host, Michael Drelichars. Thank you so much for joining us yet again. Got some loyal subscribers, so many of them, and we're so thankful that you tune in every week and you're sharing this podcast with your spheres of influence. That's how everyone grows. As you know, I Got a Guy podcast really focuses on small businesses. We like working with small business owners and small people that serve the local community. Each week we do bring on a different guest. They can talk about their business and how we help them grow and get their name out there. It's just another form of networking. And in fact, this show was born out of a book called The Go-Giver, written by Bob Berg. And in this book, he had talked all about how people think networking is all about getting referrals, but in fact, it's about giving referrals. And in the book, he talks about 5 laws of stratospheric success. So if you haven't read the book, The Go-Giver, I encourage you to download it on Audible or go to Amazon and buy it, or go to your library and rent it. But it's a great book, really powerful business stories that make a difference. Each week when we focus on our guests, we try to pick a law of the stratosphere of success from the book that marries up with our guest. This week, I want to talk about the law of value, and that is defined by give more in value than you receive in payment. Give more in value than you receive in payment. And when you get to know our guest this week, you're going to see how his value is so deep because he's got so many years of experience and he knows what he's doing, and really can help his clients out tremendously, far in excess of what he may receive in compensation. So that's a really important component, and that's how small businesses grow. So if you're new to I Got a Guy podcast, I encourage you to go to igotaguypodcast.com, and you can see a list of all of our past episodes, all of our guests, a little synopsis about each one of our guests, and you can pick and choose which episodes you want to listen to. We're on all the audio platforms, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Audible, etc. But we're also posted up on YouTube and Rumble. So if you want to watch the podcast, you can do that as well. Some people prefer that, and very much accessible. And throughout the show, you'll get information about our guests for the week, and be able to reach out to our guest and connect with them directly. So this week, our guest is a mortgage broker. His name is Mike Nielsen. Mike works for Proper Rate, which is a guaranteed rate company. We've all heard of a guaranteed rate. He's here in the Chicagoland area. He's been in the business for a long time. So please help me welcome Mike Nielsen from Proper Rate. Mike, welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, we're glad to have you here. You and I've known each other for a while now, and I'm glad we're able to find some
networking.
Time through networking.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference, and I have often said that small businesses really is the foundation of our country, and it's the foundation of our economy, and it's so important that we all promote small businesses and we help small businesses grow. And that's really why I started this podcast, because I want more businesses to thrive, and I want my own small business to thrive. So Mike, tell us about Proper Rate and maybe a little bit about your history, because I know you've been in the industry for quite a while.
Yeah. So majored in finance and marketing right out of college 20 years ago, got into the mortgage business. And I like to think that those two, that major and that minor, go very well with the mortgage industry. Obviously, sure. The finance side, but also marketing of yourself, your company. But along with marketing, I think a really high level of customer service for the client, and really understanding what that retail consumer, believe it or not, getting a mortgage is considered a retail product. It's a commodity. You can shop around for it at a bank or a credit union or online now, or you can come to me. So there's a lot of options there. So that goes back 20 years. This is my 20th year doing it in 2024. And as Michael, you and I have already talked about a little bit, interest rates in the last 18 months have gone up a lot, higher than they really have been in my 20-year career. But I like to think that, the people that weren't doing it for the right reasons are getting out of the business, and we are actually doing very, very well. I'm growing my team this year and last, even though last year volume was down from the year previous, still much higher and at a much better level than a lot of our competitors. And I like to think that's because of, the commodity is they want the lowest rate and the lowest costs, but also, it's a real estate transaction. You're buying a $500,000 home, and there's a lot that goes along with it to get to the transaction, to the closing table. And we do a lot of hand holding, a lot of customer service, whether it's your fifth house you're buying or if you're a first time buyer going through it for the first time. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Proper Rate was started 4 years ago. Prior to that, my other 16 years were spent at Guaranteed Rate. We rolled out Proper Rate 4 years ago, kind of as a smaller boutique company tied to a real estate firm, but we can work with all real estate companies. So Proper Rate is a Guaranteed Rate company, and I like to think that Guaranteed Rate is the big company, the behemoth, and the best customer service comes from where I'm at, which is at Proper Rate. So.
Yeah, sometimes those boutique firms, you can provide a little bit more hand holding and guidance, and with all your experience, that's got to carry a lot of weight, especially when you're talking to a first time home buyer who have more questions than they have answers. And
Absolutely. And I always think, you go to someone that's referred to you, let's say it's insurance, or let's say it's for a landscaper coming over to your house or whatever. We all, especially us in networking, know that person that's really not in that job either for a long time or for the long haul. They're kind of, cutting corners here and there. When my phone rings, I let people know right away, hey, we're here tonight, tomorrow, a year from now. The hand holding, whether it's rates dropped and you refinance a mortgage or you're buying your first home, we're here for all of that. I mean, being in the industry for a long time, yeah, the small company lets me kind of pivot and move and be a little bit more nimble on speed, because we'll get into that, how a mortgage transaction needs to close a lot faster than it used to.
Sure.
But yeah, it's me first, company second. And what I mean by that is I give my cell phone out to my clients and my real estate agents and things like that. They call me first.
Right.
So don't think of it as a big company or a small company. You're calling me for that mortgage advice.
Right. And because you're a career person, you've been in this for 20 years. That's a long time in any industry, honestly. But that you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. You've been through some challenging situations, and you've been through some easy transactions, I'm sure. But when you come up with a new, especially a first time home buyer, and I don't want to focus just on first time home buyers, but the analogy makes sense. When you come up with a first time home buyer, and they don't know what they don't know, and so your experience carries so much weight that and if you walk into any other firm and you get somebody that's been in the job for 2 months, big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah. So obviously right now, as you mentioned, rates are up. So refinances are probably almost non-existent, right? Maybe for select situations.
Yeah, and what people should understand is I'm a residential mortgage lender, so the house, the roof over your head, investment properties, maybe a second home, things like that. So it's actually like something that a human being, whether it's you or a tenant or a renter or a family member, would live in. So not commercial stuff, not buying land, things like that. Yeah, that's our product. And when you're talking about first time buyers, yeah, I mean, they need a lot of hand holding, and people need to know right now, first time home buyers are really leading the pack. Why is that? Because sellers, people that already own a home, they might have a really, really good low interest rate, so they don't want to sell. Buyers that have something to sell, they don't want to lose that rate and buy a new house at a higher interest rate. So it's the first time buyers that don't have anything to sell, no strings attached, that are saying, find me a house at this price or at a price I can afford. And the lenders are really passing along a lot of really good benefits to those. Two things that I'll touch on really quick are there's a grant program. It is state and county and specific, but it's also income limit specific. It is where a first-time buyer has to, again, first-time buyer, let's go back, is someone who has not owned or had ownership in a property in the last 3 years. So past that, you're a first-time home buyer again, if you, in order to benefit from this. Number two is an income limit of $153,000. If you make less than that, you qualify for a $3,000 grant. Literally no strings attached, just cash at closing for you. So it's really nice. I know we said we're not going to spend too much time on first-time buyers, but there's really a good reason to, because not only are there a lot of them in the market right now, but there are a lot of good incentives for them. And I'll tell you, Michael, there's pre-approval conversations where people don't even ask for it or know about it. Well, I'm going to run those specifications, and if you can get it, I'm going to give you the good news that you probably are getting a lower interest rate because you're a first-time buyer, and the bank is handing you $3,000 at closing for being such. So huge benefits that those mortgage people that have been in it for 6 months or getting out of it in 6 months, they probably either don't have that product or they don't know about it. So it's a big one.
Right. And, I would imagine that some of those mortgage brokers that don't have the experience that you have, oftentimes, unless they've made a conscious decision that they're going to, double down and invest in their field, they're looking for the quick hits. And sometimes the first time home buyer, it may take a little bit of time, especially right now if you're bidding on multiple properties and you're losing them because there's multiple offers, et cetera. But the refi market, which obviously has slowed up quite a bit, that was the low hanging fruit for a long time when the rates were low, and anybody can do those. So I've heard that a lot of people have gotten out of the market have gotten out because the refis have kind of subsided quite substantially.
Yeah, and that's the route I was going to go previously when I got on the tangent about being residential. So in the residential space, there's two types of transactions. There's a purchase transaction you use to buy the home or the condo or the property. And then there's a refinance transaction, which is redoing the loan you already have at a lower interest rate or a different term, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be term related. It could be divorce related or taking someone off the loan, qualifying differently, putting a big chunk of cash towards the loan and borrowing less, all those things. And do know that none of our loan products have any prepayment penalty. So anyone, after you've done that purchase and you're talking about a refinance, which when rates drop again, we will be doing a lot of those transactions.
Sure.
Do know that there's no penalty to do anything to your loan with us at any time, which is really important. The last thing you want to do is close on a house at 7%, rates drop to 6%, and your mortgage person calls you or you call them and they say, oh, you got to wait a couple of years. Well, that really, really stinks because, when we're talking about rates going down, they were nearing 8%. Then they were at 7%. Now we're like probably high sixes. Someone that has 8% down to 6.75, depending on their loan size, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month.
Sure.
And also we cover the cost on a refinance. So yes, you're absolutely right that a lot of the business has slowed and a lot of people are getting out of this business because they don't have anything to sell. They were always refinance people. They don't have real estate agents or anyone sending them that buyer business, that purchase business.
Right.
And that's where we've always, I know, like I said, you have two transactions. So if you're only going to do one in any industry, and that one dries up and all of a sudden you're chasing your tail to go to the other side, it's too late. And I think that's the case for a lot of real estate professionals and mortgage professionals right now.
Yeah. And obviously, for those of you that did play in both those those arenas, refis and purchases all along. Pivoting, focusing on one versus the other is easy to do because you have the relationship, you have the contacts, you have the real estate contacts and the networking contacts where you can just continue to keep on going. And
Right.
so I applaud you for having the foresight to and the commitment, the personal commitment that this is the field you're going to be in, and you're going to continue serving people, and now doing it for 20 years is awesome. So
What you
that's
and I have talked about it comes down to
yeah,
loving what you do. I mean, and that sounds like a simple thing to say, but your job's not easy. Most jobs aren't. Like, it's putting in the time and putting in the work, and you got to like it, because if you don't, I think that's also the reason certain people are getting out. It's a harder business. Yes, you have less of it, but you can still get a paycheck, stay in it. But I think certain people are like, you know what? I don't really want to be a numbers guy anymore. So
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, and you're right. In every business there are trials and tribulations, ebbs and flows. It doesn't matter what business it is, but you first have to really enjoy it, embrace it, and and just really be passionate about it. And I find that in my business, GPS tracking, it's a one-off business. Not a one-off business, but it's not a popular business. In all your networking that you do, I'm probably the only GPS tracking guy you network with.
You're the only one, right? Which is a good thing for
Because
you.
which is great. Which is great because I can network in any networking group virtually anywhere, and rarely do I find any competition. But we also serve a different market too. I mean, we serve a much smaller market. Commercial companies that have vehicles. So not every company has vehicles, and so it's a completely different animal. And I don't want to confuse the two. But the point is that I am passionate about it, and I'm happy with what I've chosen as well. So that's an important component because you get out of bed every morning. You want to be able to get to work and work hard for your clients, and I know you work hard for your clients because you want them to you want to be able to serve these clients, maybe with their first home, and then 5 or 6 years down the road when they want to upgrade, you want to be the guy to help them upgrade it next time, and then they might want to refinance at some point, or maybe they want to refer their best friend or their sister or their brother or what have you, and you grow exponentially because of that.
Absolutely. And back to like I said, when you get a referral and you can kind of sense when you're calling on your own behalf of someone not being really great at it, you also know that feeling when you call the insurance guy that you need help right now with a new policy or a claim, and they answer and they get it knocked out and they get it done for you immediately, and you're like, I do want to refer my family and friends to him or her because they are that great. So absolutely, that is the I love constructive feedback to any little part of my team, anyone that works with me or for me. I want that feedback because we always want to be razor sharp on the service, the interest rate, making sure everyone's happy. You can't make everyone happy. We have figured out in this world, but you sure can try. And I would say, a good high 99%, you can take good care of. So it's
Right.
great.
You're right. You can never satisfy 100% of the people 100% of the time, but if you do the best possible job for everybody, chances of success in that area is much higher, and we see the same thing, and you have to go with your gut sometimes. So
Yeah, exactly.
so we're going to take a quick break here, Mike, and when we come back from the break, I want to get into some details about some of the solutions and some of the stuff we talked about beforehand. But there's a lot more detail we can get into, so that somebody listening would say, "Gee, I need to give Mike a call because maybe they want to buy a house as soon as the rates drop to 6.25, they may say that's my magic number, or 6%, or I'm looking for a house now, but I'm not, so we want to help people get prepared and reach out to you when they're ready. So let's start with getting your contact information so I can share that with our audience. How do you want
absolutely.
to reach out to you?
Two ways. My cell phone number, 773-620-2870. Again, 773-620-2870. Or my email address, pretty easy, is Mike at properrate.com. MIKE at PROPERRATE.com.
Okay, great. So phone number or email, 773-620-2870 is your phone number. Okay, and Mike at
Exactly right.
properrate.com. Great. So I will have that on the screen. We'll put that in the show notes. And as I tell you, our listeners every week, when you do reach out to Mike, let him know you heard about him here on I Got a Guy podcast. And Mike will certainly let me know that that our loyal fan base is reaching out to him and getting the process started, or just having an introductory conversation. So great. So we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back, and we'll continue talking with Mike Nielsen from Proper Rate, a guaranteed rate company. So we'll be right back. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. I hope you're getting a lot of knowledge from this week's guest. But now a word from our sponsor. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions works with business owners that own commercial vehicles. We help these business owners enhance their growth and profit through the use of GPS tracking technology. Specifically, Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions is known for three key principles. First, we are very knowledgeable in the field of GPS tracking and working diligently to learn more every day. Second, we are accessible. We do not hide behind a toll-free number, and we do not have any overseas call centers. We know our clients personally, and we're extremely committed to serving all of our clients as we'd want to be served. And third, we are responsive. We deliver our GPS units promptly and work diligently to install as quickly as possible. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions is consistently striving to exceed our clients' expectations. You can learn more about Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions at precisefleettracking.com or call us at 847-865-6008. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. We make GPS tracking simple. Now, back to the show. Okay, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm Michael Drelichars, host of I Got a Guy podcast. And today we are with Mike Nielsen from Proper Rate, a guaranteed rate company. Mike is a mortgage professional, been in the mortgage business for 20 years, rocking the residential mortgage area, helping clients with first-time purchases, upgrades, investment property, second homes, vacation homes, etc. Right, Mike?
Exactly right. Yeah, the three transactions in residential are primary residence, second home, or also known as vacation home. So a second to your primary, and then all others are investment properties. We work in condos, townhouses, single-family homes, multi-unit properties, mixed use, to name a few.
So let's define that real quick, because in a multi-resident building, it's 4 flat and below, right? So 6 flats don't qualify.
Correct.
So 4 flat and below is
five and above, 5 units and above would be would need commercial financing. So we deal with obviously any sort of single units, 2 units, 3 units, and 4 units.
Okay. And when you talk about
very
mixed use,
popular in the Chicagoland market, there's a lot of, you'll know them as a 2 flat or a 3 flat or a 4. Lot of those residentially financed. And then when you get to the building that's at the corner that might be 6, 10, 20 units, those would be commercial financing.
Sure. And you also mentioned mixed use, which is typically like a retail storefront on the bottom with apartments above.
Exactly right. And we want to see the commercial to be, because again, we're a residential lender, we want to see the commercial to be 25 to 30% or less of the total percentage of the space.
In square footage?
So a lot of times commercial will be like the front of the first floor. Behind that might be a unit. Behind that might be parking. We can count the parking, all outdoor space, and then the units above it all is residential. So a lot of times we can get to the 70, 75, 80% plus residential total.
Okay. So, and that's on square footage basis.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. That's new information to me. I wasn't aware that the mixed use would fall under a residential mortgage. That's good to know. I love that type of property. I think that's tremendous.
Me too.
Investment opportunity for folks. The commercial tenants typically stay a long time, and bringing in a few residents in a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments that's great.
Yeah, and so, I have a lot of those investment clients that they move into one of the units, and the other units, pay their mortgage for them. It's not always a complete break even, but you can get pretty close in Chicago with with the cost of rents. Rents have continued to increase pretty significantly through the pandemic and in the last few years. So
Right.
really good for that investor, for that landlord, that kind of thing. And I'm a landlord as well. Like you have investment properties, so very well versed in the nervousness that goes along with that. And my
Sure.
biting off more than I can chew. Obviously, but I do have first time buyers go into owning and landlording all at the same time. And I like to think that's because, we do that hand holding and we do that help that gets them over the finish line. So
Yeah. And certainly with your own personal experience as a landlord, that's got to pay dividends when you have a first time home buyer that hasn't experienced that. So you can kind of help them through that process.
absolutely. And that goes back to my childhood. My dad had a 4-unit property. He was going over there, once a week, whether it's to get the quarters out of the washer dryer, or, shovel in the snow or things like that. I'm not as hands on with my properties because, they're not just right down the street from me. But just having that know-how and that history
Yes.
lends to, being pro landlord, pro investor, because I've seen myself and others do so well in it, including my father. So why not, talk them and or their real estate agent or a spouse or a partner or someone who's buying with them. There's a lot of angst there of what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. And what's not going to happen is it usually isn't as big of a headache as, yes, you have people that you need to tend to, and they are your tenants, and they might live right above you or below you, but it's I have nothing but good things to say about it. Yes, there's some nightmares and some headaches, but few and far between.
Yeah. And when you think about it from a first time home buyer perspective, making that commitment, maybe they're paying rent today, or maybe this first time home buyer is living at home with their parents. But you want to, you buy a $350,000 house, you have a sizable mortgage commitment every month. Um, Now you spend maybe a little bit more money buying a mixed use or a multi unit building, and your tenants pay most of the mortgage. You as the owner could live in one of those units, and maybe take the smallest unit, but you can live either free or much less than it would cost you to live in either an apartment or in a single family home, and you're building equity
Exactly.
along the way. You're gaining great experience, and then over time, not only do rents increase as time goes on, but when the market changes and you have the opportunity to refinance your mortgage, and maybe that's 2 or 3 years down the road, but you refinance the mortgage, now you save yourself a few $100s a month, and so it's kind of it's all positive. You win all the way through, even when you factor in some of the headaches and some of the nuances that go along with transitioning tenants and minor repairs, etc.
And I like to think of it as a multi-unit. You have multiple properties in one building, and therefore it's usually valued higher or for more. And if you're doing all the things, having you have your life insurance, you have your financial advisor, you have your 401k, your Roth, all of those investment vehicles, and then all of a sudden at the end of you're nearing retirement, and you're like, oh, look at that, my tenants, not maybe a little bit of me, my tenants have paid off my $1 million building. Add that to all the other stuff you've planned financially over those, or at least hopefully you have over those 20, 30, 40 years. And there's a whole different level of wealth because you
Yeah,
have that extra million thrown in, and very different from a retirement standpoint when you have an apartment building and or a rental property spinning off income, but also a huge asset. So
yeah, yeah. Years ago, I read a book called by Robert Allen. It was called Multiple Streams of Income, and I read this book cover to cover, and it's one of the few books, in addition to The Go Giver, that I read and I really embraced. And I probably read this book probably 25 years ago, and it actually got me started in investment properties. And
oh, that's
it's
awesome.
so significant. It's so significant. So, but I'm thrilled that you have that firsthand experience, because not everybody does. And I've talked to other mortgage people before that will talk about investment property, but don't understand it because they don't own it themselves. They haven't lived it, and you've lived that. You live it today. You lived it in your past, and you are a huge resource to, especially somebody new coming into the market that's trying to figure it out.
And I know I could share, like you said, living it. Like there's, you mention a book, and of course read up on it as much as you can, but the living it is, you just got to take the plunge and do it. And you and I could probably share, stories and secrets that other people wouldn't even think about, because
Right.
again, we've only learned those not because you and I are the smartest guys in the room, but because we've actually lived it. What do you do when a tenant does this? What do you do when this breaks? How do you warranty your property? How do you insure your property? How do you raise rents? There's just so much. And I just, back to the passion of kind of mortgages and, how I grew up and my father having one. It's just fun to me, believe it or not, running out the door on a Saturday morning to help out a tenant or whatever. Hopefully that doesn't happen on Christmas morning kind of thing, which it never
Right.
has. But there's a true passion there for it. And I kind of, I love it. So.
Yeah, I often say I love the first of the month because I actually collect my rent in person, and
I like that too.
and people will question me on that, and I'm actually in each one of my properties first of the month because I want to see it, I want to be there, I want to know that I want the tenant to know that I am committed to do what I need to do, and sometimes it gets a few repairs extra that I need to do. I'm okay with a honeydew list because it means my property is being well taken care
Right.
of. So,
Absolutely.
but
Investing
just
right back into yourself.
right, and that's just my philosophy, and frankly, that's how I run my precise fleet tracking business as well. Is very hands on and very engaged with my customers directly, um, as opposed to being a hands off kind of person. So, so why don't you share a few other stories with us, Mike, so people can get maybe another situation that maybe they hadn't thought of.
Yeah, so I touched previously on closing a transaction quickly. First, I'll go into a little interest rate update. This could be dated this afternoon. This could be dated a month from now. So obviously pay attention to when we're talking and when this podcast gets posted. But I would say a 30-year fix is around 6.75%. Yes, that's a lot higher than 4 and 5%, but a lot lower than the 8% we were at. So in the current market, in the current economy, there is an expectation of a Fed rate cut coming in the coming months, and interest rates should continue to level off and or go lower. So interest rate update is that rates are just go within the sixes, away from the sevens and eights, and we're hoping to go lower. But one thing I want to touch on would be the speed to the transaction. So typical mortgage transaction, just so you know, residentially is about 30 to 45 days, meaning buyer and seller come together on July 1st, and they usually set a closing for between August 1st and August 15th, 30 to 45 days, give or take. Well, in the current environment where there's less inventory, less homes for sale, the seller sometimes, and I would say more often than not, wants to get out of their home and they want to get their money and close and sell the home faster so that they can move on with life, they can invest their money, they can do what they want to be done. I'm selling my house, I want to sell it sooner rather than later, I guess would be the better way to put it. So in the current environment, we do have transactions that hit our desk that are, hey, I got to close in 2 weeks. So I just told you 30 to 45 days comes down to 14, much faster. But I will say all day, every day, we can make that transaction happen. Apply on a Monday, you're closing 2 weeks later, which would give or take be the following Friday, or the following Monday after that would be 2 weeks. So a lot of people appreciate it. A lot of real estate agents appreciate it because their buyers can now compete with cash offers. It's another thing in the current market is that a lot of people are paying cash for homes. When they're coming to me, they're not paying cash because they're getting a mortgage. Well, is the mortgage going to muddy up the process, and is it going to take a lot of time? No, we usually have our loans approved in 10 days, like done start to finish in 10 days, and then go to closing on that 14th day or 20th day or shortly after that. So speed in getting to the closing table is very important right now and a huge piece of my business. I love it. The clients are in and out of my life and I'm in and out of their life in a short amount of time. They're great people. They're great clients. I'm not trying to push them out the door into buying their new home. But a lot of them appreciate it because it's like, okay, there's a lot going on with buying a house. It's a big decision, and they're putting the keys in the front door 2 weeks later, and they're really excited about that.
Now,
the other piece I think we had talked about. Oh, go ahead. Let's dive into that a little bit more.
yeah. I'm gonna dig a little deeper here. So that 2 weeks seems like a really short period of time, and it's awesome that you're able to accomplish that. But I'm assuming that this is when you have a client that you've already pre-approved. You have all their financials, you have their W-2s, you have all their bank records, you run their credit. Somebody that walks into a house today, decides to buy the house, and then call you, introduce themselves, and say, "Let's get started, Mike. I want to buy this house." This could take some time to get their pre-approval taken care of. That's right.
You're hitting on all cylinders there. That is absolutely true. Are we still gonna move quickly with that new client, even though they're coming to us a little bit after the fact? For sure. They just are going to hear from us, and they're going to know from us what we need you to do first. Ball's in your court. I need you to apply on my website. It takes 10 or 15 minutes. Then after that, it's going to do a documentation request that you're going to upload. Tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, stuff like that. If you're quick and you do that, Michael, very often have clients call me on a Saturday morning. By Saturday night, they've done those two big steps, so that Sunday they can write the offer, and the offer is accepted Monday, and here we go. We're clipping away at that 2 week timeline. So something like that can happen. The more ideal situation. Oh, go ahead.
That's really quick. That's really okay. So I didn't realize you could go that quickly.
It's technology and some automation that help. That online tool puts all of their information in a really nice package for me and my team to really dive in. Also, back to my team, we're really good at the details. Tax returns. Are you self-employed? Do you own multiple businesses? What about your spouse? What about your money in the bank? What about your trust? Where's income, assets? What's everything? Let's dive into that first, because if you do have a complicated situation, that might add a day or two to that process, and we might need more documentation from you. So that's all very important to let them know up front. And a lot of clients that do know they need to move that quickly, they will move that quickly for us to get the transaction done.
Yeah, but you do put a lot of responsibility back on the client, because they have to have the documentation pulled together. They can't be dragging their feet, because it's going to slow everything down, and so they've got to be Johnny on the spot as well.
Right. And the transaction situation doesn't change that much, but it is much better if you get what's called pre-approved, is what we're talking about. The pre is the key word there. If you're saying, hey, I'm buying this house in 2 weeks, there is no pre. We're just going right ahead with the approval. The pre-approval, lets you kind of take a deep breath, talk with husband, wife, spouse, brother, sister, whoever you might be buying with, or really talk with me if you're a single buyer, for example, to really go through all the details and questions. Very often a client asks me what we've already talked about earlier on the podcast, which is, do your loans have any penalties? Hey, if I get this money from my grandma or my aunt, can I pay down the loan in a big chunk and adjust my monthly payment? Things like that. Absolutely, yes. Great question. So I love a fast process, but the slower process allows me to do that more hand holding and really help with the additional questions a client might have up front. So really, a pre-approval can still be that same day, filling out your stuff, putting your documents there, or you can kind of stretch it out to a few days or a week. And then we spend that first 7 days, and then you're off, going out looking at homes with your real estate agent. My phone rings 2 days, 20 days, 50 days later. Hey, we found the best house. And that we're already lined up and we're already set up to do that. So we can click go. And that's how the 10, 14, 20-day closing can happen as a no-brainer. That's not what other lenders are doing. That's not, when you walk into a bank, are they doing all of that same day? Absolutely not. They probably also don't have the technology. You're probably dropping off paper. I don't want to do anything like that. I don't want my social security number or my income floating out there on some banker's desk or anything like that. I also don't want to upload to a crazy online lender, ABC Mortgage out in South Carolina. It's like, who are they? who's the person I'm talking to? So real estate, there's a lot of soft touch hand holding that other lenders and other banks just miss. It's just a complete miss. It's like, oh, let's just do the commodity this way, lock your rate, here's the documents, don't ever call me again. People call me dozens of times through that 2-week process, or whether it's a 30-day process or 40, 50, 60, whatever it is days.
Sure. So now, we touched on this before, but right now, because there's limited inventory on the market, oftentimes there are multiple offers being presented to the home owner, and frequently their cash offers folded in. Now, sometimes the cash offers may be less than asking price or what have you, but how do you help your pre-approved clients when they're up against multiple offers, and how do you help them stand out or differentiate themselves to be in a good position to win a purchase like that?
The best question. That is where residential real estate, buying a home for anyone, that is where it sits today. You're going to compete with people for that home. You're going to also compete with multiple people, multiple offers. You might also compete with cash. One thing I will say that wins every single time is the highest offer. If you're looking at a house that's $275, and no matter what the situation is, or you write the greatest, nicest letter to that seller, if someone comes in at $280 from $275 in my example, someone offers more. Michael, you and I both, money is king. I'm taking the bigger piece. Obviously, then you have to dive into if they're getting financing and all the other pieces, or are they going to do an inspection? Are they going to do an appraisal? So many different factors. But first and foremost is putting your best foot forward as far as price and what you can afford. We run numbers for people all day long. Hey, I want to offer on 123 Main Street. Can you run numbers at 275, 280, and 285? Of course, I want you to know exactly what that difference in price does to your monthly payment. So then speed comes in. So let's say there's a cash offer and a financed offer, both at that 275 example. Okay, now the seller has things that are mirroring each other. Well, a lot of times a seller and or their real estate agent thinks that a cash offer means I'm going to accept this, you're giving me cash tomorrow. No. Whether you're getting financing or not, there's title, paperwork, there's recording, there's a legal process, there's a lot that goes into it that typically takes you out to that give or take 2 weeks, sometimes more point. So if I'm saying financing, these people are great, we're going to have no problem, they're very well qualified, and we're going to close in 10 days, and your cash offer over here is the same price and closing in 14, 15, 20 days, all of a sudden the financed offer is better. So that's a huge piece of how I win the business and help the buyer win the house, which is number one, most important. If you have a real estate agent and taking buyers out and they keep losing in these multiple offer situations, that doesn't feel good. You're getting interested. You're getting emotionally invested in that home that husband or wife or whoever or kids are really excited to buy. And then you're told, oh, sorry, we lost out. Well, what can we do to win more? And again, that speed to the transaction, that hand holding with the monthly payment and what they can afford or what they could go up to is a big one. And lastly, I will say being local is very important. I lend in not all 50 states, but about half of them. So, Tennessee, Florida, California, Arizona, to name a few. I'm not local in those areas. I do some business there. I don't do a ton. I can do transactions there and get people the best interest rate. Sure. When we're talking about Chicago land in the Midwest, I'm Chicago born and raised. I know when I order an appraisal for our transaction, they're going to be local to that market. So a lot of times when I pre-approve someone, they'll see our pre-approval letter is, Chicago, Illinois. And they'll say, okay, you might be out in some suburb 10, 15, 20 miles away, but Chicago, Illinois pre-approval letter is going to hold a lot more weight than a Phoenix, Arizona pre-approval letter. So local, believe it or not, I can lend in all those states and I'm not local. So, it doesn't matter as much there. Chicagoland market, the Midwest market, you really need to be local and know what you're doing, back to helping that buyer win the business. If you just go to your bank and it's some willy-nilly, nondescript pre-approval letter. No way. A lot of times the real estate agent for the seller is calling me to say, hey, Mike, tell me about you. Tell me about how fast you're going to get this deal done. Tell me about your local appraisers. It's a real touchy-feely industry that matters when we're talking about winning for that buyer. So
Okay, that's an interesting point. So you oftentimes will have the seller's agent call you, or they call you the buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent calls you.
Both. So a lot of times, again, my buyer's agent who has referred that buyer to me, very important to me, I tell them, hey, use all the tools we have to
Sure.
win this. One of them is, do you want me to call that listing agent? The listing agent is working right with the seller, and that they're going to help them make that decision. So if they get a call from me, that looks really good. A lot of times it just goes to voicemail and I leave a nice voicemail. Or a lot of times the buy side agent says, hey, if you need him, he's great. Here's Mike's info. My phone rings at 6 o'clock. I'm walking into dinner on a Friday night. I take that call. It's a quick 5 minutes. I say, hey, I'm glad, and why I mentioned 6 o'clock on a Friday night before dinner, I'm answering my phone. Like there's
Sure.
the service level for that buyer. That listing agent is like, oh, maybe let's test this guy to see if he's really as good as he says he is. And then I pass along how well qualified that buyer is, how they have money in the bank for the down payment, how great their credit scores are, how fast we can close, all that good stuff. So it's a pretty big piece that we've learned over the more competitive recent years, but it works. So having buyers win the house is how we do our business, because without it, we got nothing.
Well, right, and that's how you earn a satisfied client, and those subsequent referrals that come from that satisfied client. So it becomes an exponential component to your growth.
Right, big time, in all ways, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great scenario, and it's. I guess when you think about it, it's been such a long time since I was a first time home buyer. It's hard to think back to those days, but the reality is, I don't know if my kids are in their 20s, and I'm like to get them into purchasing their homes in the near future, but they have so much less knowledge and experiences, having somebody like you on their side is really critical because of the experience that you have.
Right, and now more than ever, and that was you mentioned our businesses, and most small businesses like having to pivot and be nimble. This is all a new last couple of years thing as the market has changed, as there's less inventory, less homes for sale, and a lot of buyers entering the market because they need a roof over their head. They want to buy instead of renting. We moved to this local speed. We've always been local, born and raised in Chicago, but like speed and product and things for the specific client. Of course, that customer service. You don't have that. That's who we're talking is out of or soon to be out of the business.
Yeah. Well, and I know you've also fine-tuned the process with the technology, the website,
Right.
Receiving the documents electronically and helping through that approval process quickly. All those tweaks and adjustments have benefited your clients tremendously, and probably differentiated you from a lot of your competitors.
Absolutely, and that's what you have to keep doing when you're in a commodity market. Okay, interest rate and fees. Okay, we want to be best there, but we want to step away from that to say, hey, everyone has that. How are we different? And switching that up and forever doing that. If we talked in a few years, maybe it would be like, oh, totally different market, totally different interest rate environment. We're doing things now yet again differently. But at the current market, it's very much buyer focused with their real estate agent. Let's win that house. If they want that house, we want them to win it. And we don't want financing in any way to be holding them back.
Right. Well, you mentioned fees, and I'll make a comment there quickly. There's obviously there are fees associated with the appraisal and the title and et cetera. A lot of those fees are fixed. There might be some variable fees, But the bottom line is, when you're making this largest investment in your life, um, shopping for the cheapest rates and cheapest fees is not necessarily always the best scenario either. You want to be
Right. And
competitive,
right. Yeah. You want to be competitive.
but at the same time, you have all those other components that add so much more value above and beyond the fees that you pay.
And I call that see the forest through the trees. Obviously some people are very interest rate and cost focused. You should be. It's a financial decision. You got to look at your bottom line, but also you got to look in the eye of that other person, that other mortgage person, to say, okay, can I trust you? Are you going to fulfill, whether it's the timeline or the appraisal or how long it's going to take to get the documents and all that kind of stuff? And go back to the example about technology. If your banker is having you drop off hard copy documents, you're driving there, you're spending all that time on your weekends. Again, our pre-approval and uploading everything technology wise should very often, almost always, be same day. So stuff like that really matters.
Right. And of course, the other point, as you mentioned earlier, if you call your mortgage broker at 6 p.m. on a Friday night and they don't answer their phone and they return your call at 10 o'clock Monday morning, that's a lot of time lost. And in your case, if you answer their phone at 6 p.m. on a Friday night, you answer their question in 5 minutes, and then they can continue with their transaction. It moves the process along, and it really lends itself to a successful transaction all the way around.
And I always say, you're getting a mortgage from your standard brick and mortar bank. Drive past there on Sunday. Are they open? Drive past there on Saturday past noon. Are they open? That's when real estate transactions are done, on weekends. So Another great way to kick off a transaction the right way is to do it in that time frame when the real estate agents are working and trying to put the deal together, as opposed to waiting. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line for the seller and or the buyer, no one wants to wait till Monday. Yeah, that's the world we live in. It moves quickly. Sometimes it can be challenging, but 6 o'clock Friday night to Monday morning, way too much time has gone by for someone to make a decision, and they're probably going to make the decision on who else is moving that fast and returning calls and answering the phone and stuff like that. Happens all the time. But again, a great way to kick off a transaction where everyone's already feeling good. Mike answered, seller and buyer came together on concessions and credits and price, and that feels really good. They always say about negotiating, like, you want everyone to win, but also everyone to lose. And that means you have a good negotiation between the buyer and seller. So having a mortgage person and a title person and an appraiser and your real estate agent, of course, right there with you every minute, not wait until Monday, is a huge advantage.
Yeah, very much so. That's awesome. Well, Mike, thanks for sharing all those stories. I really, I see your passion. I can feel it. And I'm excited about it. Yeah, it really is good because it's I love real estate. I have loved the field of real estate forever, and I've owned my investment properties, my own homes for so many years, and I want more people to do the same.
And I remember that the first time we met, right away I was like, you mentioned about your rentals, and I was like, we got a click here. And then we started talking about classic cars, and I was like, okay, now we have almost my two, besides, being honest and a good family man and good with your, spouse and kids, like cars and rental properties, like you had me.
They line up, right? Exactly.
Hopefully that's why I'm on the show today. So thank you.
I also like your first name.
My mom calls me Michael, like yours says. Friends call me Mike. Parents call me Michael. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Very good. So, Mike, why don't you share your contact information again with our listeners so they can reach out to you and get the process started with their dream home?
Call or text my cell phone, 773-620-2870. Again, I say text because if it's a busy day and you just have a quick question, 773-620-2870. Email is mike@properrate.com, MIKE@properrate.com.
Great. All right. I will put that in the notes, put that on the screen, and I encourage our listeners to let you know that they heard about you here on I Got a Guy podcast. So
Awesome.
as we wrap up the show here today, any other thoughts you wanted to share with our listeners, our viewers?
No, just if you don't want to keep an eye on interest rates, if you own a home already and you don't want to keep an eye on interest rates or when you should refinance, reach out and we'll walk you through that. But also, we will reach back out to you when rates get to a point where you should refinance. And then, if whether you're a first-time buyer or a move-up buyer or even downsizing, whatever the situation is, a new investor like we talked about, wanting to get into the investment side of real estate, pre-approval. It's a phone call. It's a text message, as we just said. Let's kick off the process. Trust me, it's not going to be as hard as you think. A lot of times, people think getting a mortgage is very, very difficult. Like I said before, let's make it easy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that, and I really appreciate you spend some time today to be on the podcast. And we will get this out to our listeners here and keep it growing. So thank you for that.
You do a great job, Michael.
I
This is
appreciate
really
that.
fun.
Yeah, great. So as we wrap up, I'm going to throw a quick little plug in for my day job, which helps me pay the bills, and that is Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. Like Mike, we are very focused on customer service and being accessible to our clients. I had two situations that came up, which I would to share. I had a client reach out to me at 7:30 Thursday evening, and he called me to leave me a voicemail. I answered my phone, and he was shocked. He's like, "Well, I expecting to leave you a
I love
voicemail."
that.
I'm like, "I'm here. Let's chat." And we chatted for about a half an hour. It was 7:30 on a Thursday night. I wasn't doing anything really that critical, and we had a great conversation. And my competitors don't do that. They hide behind it. Oftentimes they're an overseas call center. Had another client that is looking to. It was offered some GPS tracking from their insurance carrier for a reduced rate. And the reality is, when an insurance carrier offers you a GPS tracking unit to save money in your insurance, oftentimes it's going to cost you more money, because once they plug the tracking unit in your vehicle, now they have actual data on how you drive, and oftentimes it's used against you. So my provider, we don't sell our data to anybody. When you use our GPS tracking, that tracking data is owned by you, and nobody sees that data. So it's private information, and it's not used against you. So we don't require long-term contracts. We provide very personalized service. We bill our services on a month-to-month basis, and we don't lock our clients in. So we make it very easy to do business with us, and we have very loyal customers because of it. So if you use GPS tracking or considered using GPS tracking, I encourage you to reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. Our website is precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call us at 847-865-6008. It's 847-865-6008. We'll get a conversation started and go from there. So, all right, thank you for that. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to share this podcast and reach out to Mike with any questions. And hope you all have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. For past podcasts and more information, go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. Please share this podcast on your social media feeds and tune in again next week to I Got a Guy podcast.